Hola, ¿cómo están todos? Bueno, vamos a ver si podemos conectarnos con Jeremy Harmer hoy. Esta mañana probamos, hicimos una prueba, salió todo bien. Hi Susan, hi Gus. Así que vamos a esperar que podamos hacerlo. Hello Amelia. Hi Marcos. Estoy mostrando el peinado para Gus, que me pregunta. Bueno, vamos a ver si logro ver a Jeremy aquí para mandarle la invitación. Todavía no lo veo, pero le voy a enviar. Le voy a enviar un mensaje por el chat. Tengan paciencia. Mientras tanto, vayan diciendo desde dónde se están uniendo a este vivo. Es el último vivo de este ciclo 2020. Wow, tell Jeremy I'm getting him his Nile GNT. Okay, I will tell him, Susan. Okay, he will soon be joining us. Hi Marina, happy birthday. Hey, there you are.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Buenas tardes a todos, and I've made it. I finally made it.
People from Mendoza are saying hello, Jeremy.
Hi, Mendocinos. Lovely to, gosh.
Tell them you're running out of your delicious wine over there.
I'm tomorrow morning. I'm going to buy some more Mendocino wine because why wouldn't you? Because it's beautiful. At the moment, though, what I'm drinking is a very nice. It's called Loulou Lalouette Chinon from France.
Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa! So welcome to the happy hour, then.
Thank you. You're very good health.
Cheers.
But you're drinking champagne, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I told you this morning.
You did. You did.
I am celebrating. This is our 25th happy hour. Thank you
incredible.
for joining us.
It's a real pleasure. Can I just tell you that it's wonderful, the world we live in. I mean, I know it isn't. You're locked down and we're all locked down, and there have been the most appalling illness and suffering and stuff. But we're all connected as well. So that I've just literally come from a campfire meeting with a whole lot of teachers from Central Europe. And we've been singing songs and telling stories and things like that. And then I said to them, I have to go. I have to go. This is such a funny thing.
You told them,
I have to go.
You told them as you did today. Yeah. This morning you told me, I have to go now because I have a meeting. So you left. And then at the meeting you said, I have to go. I have a happy hour now.
That's exactly what I said, yes.
So Jeremy, thank you for joining us. Cheers to you. And we are going to have a lovely evening here. Look, people from all over the world that are joining us. It is exactly as you said. This is a wonderful time, you know, of reunion.
Yeah, yeah. And it's allowed us to do things that we could never do before. That's what's so extraordinary. Now, as you know, I had the unforgettable experience of coming to Jujuy and spending a few days there. but I never thought I'd be able to get back there, especially in lockdown.
In lockdown, that's right.
And here
so
we are.
Yes, I hope Marcela is joining us too, Marcela Paz, because she was your host when you came here.
She was indeed. She was indeed. And a very good host too.
So Jeremy, tell us, for the students who don't know you, for people who are joining us for the first time, where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from Cambridge in the United Kingdom. And I've lived here since, well, I'm not going to tell you, for a long time. I'm not from here. I'm from a place in England called Stratford-on-Avon, which is famous as the birthplace of William Shakespeare. But when I left Mexico, because I spent some years teaching in Mexico and came back to live in Britain, I ended up in Cambridge. And my kids went to school here and everything like that. So Cambridge, and now I'm probably stuck here, although I might move slightly outside. But I love it because it's got my two great passions are English language teaching, which is what we do, and the other one is music, and I can do all kinds of music in Cambridge, so that's wonderful.
Wow, yes. I saw you posting about festivals,
yeah,
right?
Right. Yeah.
Music festivals.
Yes, we might talk about this later, but in lockdown, just once, I got together with 6 other players and we recorded a big concert video. We were all distanced from each other, and it was so beautiful just to play live music again. Beautiful.
Wow. And Jeremy, this is something I always ask people who come to the happy hour, and it is, where did you study, and was it the first choice you had? Was it something you wanted to do when you were very young, or it was something that turned like something you couldn't avoid doing?
Well, I went to, so super quick biography. My parents sent me, this wasn't my choice, my parents sent me to private schools, internados, boarding schools. And so I went to, my secondary school was quite a well-known public school called Marlborough College in the Wiltshire Downs. And then, which, well, I won't tell you my opinions about that, but it wasn't my choice. I think I should say that. Though I had, I sang in the choir. Anyway, and then after that, I went to the University of East Anglia, which, if you know, you know about that, don't you?
Yes. I love University of East Anglia. There are many people joining us there, alumni, yes?
Wow, yeah, that's right. And that was great. And so I did my degree there. I didn't do very well on my degree because I was doing lots of other things like acting and singing and all that kind of stuff. And then I ended up in London, and I tried to study to be a lawyer, but not me. So then I spent 2 years trying to make a living as a singer-songwriter, but I couldn't find anyone who who had the same extraordinarily high opinion of my fantastic talent as I did. So that, and it was about that time, and this is en aquel tiempo, en aquellos tiempos. This is the unfair advantage of native speakers, because I met another guitarist, and he'd just done this course in a place called International House in London, and he said, if you do this course 4 weeks, 4 weeks, that's ridiculous. If you do this course, you can maybe get a job anywhere in the world. And I sort of went to do it without too much. I mean, I'd always thought maybe teaching, but and I went to do it. And I don't know if this has happened to the people who were with us, but round about the second week, I suddenly thought, wow, this is something I could do. Wow. And I realized that it was a good fit for me personally, this teaching business. So then I did it. I taught in London.
So,
International House.
excuse me, but at the beginning it was like an adventure then.
Yeah, totally. It was like you're 22, 23 years old. You're a bit at sea, But this seemed like something. And it just. I don't know. I'm sure some of you who are with us know this. When you find it, if it's the right thing for you, it's just the right thing for you, you know. And it was. And then because I met this beautiful young woman who later became my wife, they're sadly no longer, but that's another story for another time.
Anyway, that's another story.
Exactly, but and she told me she was half English, half Russian, but she told me she'd been born and had grown up in Mexico, and so I fell in love with her, and so I fell in love with the idea of Mexico, and that's how I ended up in Mexico for quite a few years. México lindo y querido.
Wow! How long did you stay there?
In total, only about 8 years. But ever since I left, and both of my children were born in Mexico, and ever since I left, I've been going back and back and back. Porque es como si fuera un segundo hogar, ¿no? It's just like a second home.
Eso iba a preguntarte. ¿Cuánto tiempo te llevó desde la llegada a México aprender el idioma?
Pues al principio muy difícil porque mi novia en aquel tiempo, mi novia dominaba el español, obviamente, porque creció en México y era 100% bilingüe. Y entonces, y yo no tenía ni una palabra de español. Y entonces, al llegar a México, en un restaurante, por ejemplo, y el mesero me preguntó qué quiere tomar, qué quiere comer, y yo tratando de decir una palabra, 2 palabras, pero obviamente mi novia Anita interrumpió y ella contestó, y bueno, pero paso a paso, unas frases, unas palabras. El problema para un extranjero viviendo en otro país que está enseñando su propio idioma, es que todos mis colegas hablaban inglés.
Exacto.
Muchos de mis amigos y todos los alumnos, ninguno de ellos tenía el gran pasión para escucharme tratando de aprender español, sino el propósito de tenerme en la sala de clase fue que yo hablo inglés.
En inglés, exacto.
So it was really difficult at first, but then I became.
Excuse me. So the fact that not being totally immersed in the language was making it very difficult for you to switch to Spanish totally.
Yes. Well,
you were all the time struggling to talk, but then people were responding in English.
Of course, and you know your working environment is English, and that's a really. But then, and mis suegros, they obviously spoke Spanish, but we all spoke English together, and everything. So, but gradually, bit by bit, and then you need to go to the tienda to buy something, and you can't point. And in those days, you know, there weren't so many supermarkets, and then there's a phrase here, a word there. Then you learn how to say, disculpe, quiero something or other. And then, and this was what was the best learning experience ever, or acquisition experience. We could have a discussion about that. I was made, fui nombrado como director del Instituto Mexicano Sucursal Guadalajara. Y yo tenía como 36 profesores, pero varias personas de ¿cómo se dice? El contador y la persona encargada y mexicanos y que no hablan y no hablaban inglés bien, ¿no? Y bueno, and so then suddenly, y los padres de familia también.
Claro.
Los padres de familia que tocando en la puerta de la oficina del director. Señor director.
Todos los problemas eran en español.
Exactly, and so that was when it kind of happened. But I if I had my life again, because just as for you, English is I don't know, 50% of who you are or something. So Spanish for me is a major part of who I am. But I wish it had started earlier, and I wish I'd done it at school or studied it or something like that. So the you know, there's a whole discussion about whether we learn or we acquire, or whether it's a mixture of the two. But if you acquire it in like I, or you know, like that, then you have to do all the legwork yourself. You have to do all the you know. So if we had a long conversation in Spanish, you'd find that my Spanish is pretty fluent, but it's got holes in it. And I've given some talks in Spanish, but I lose some of my fluency.
And does it happen to you that you are looking for the grammar explanation in English? Like you want to understand the grammar, and people say, we just say that. There is no grammar in it. We just say like that. But you're trying to find, you know, in your adult mind, you need the explanation.
But you know, it's funny how this thing happens. I'm going to mention someone who I know that almost all of your the people here will know. So there's a Mexican song I sing, which makes me cry, but it's such a beautiful song. It's called La Barca de Oro. And I don't know if you've ever heard it, anybody, but it's a really beautiful song. Sad song. Yo ya me voy al puerto donde se halla la barca de oro que debe conducirme. Yo ya me voy. Solo vengo a despedirme. Adiós, mujer. Adiós para siempre. Adiós. It's just a beautiful, beautiful song.
Oh.
Anyway, and even now, you know, I was thinking, why is it La Barca? Why wasn't it El Barco? And so I asked a good friend of mine down there in Buenos Aires, who you know, Claudia Ferradas. I said, why isn't it El Barco? And she explained, you know, about boats, and when they become sort of people, a bit like in English, they become she, really. But that's what's funny about a foreign language. If you don't study it, you still find there are things that should be obvious, but they're not, you know? So.
Exactly, they're not. So did you finish your very, very, very short biography?
Oh, well then while I was in Mexico, oh, here's a little thing. So I then came back to England and did a master's at Reading University, and I really enjoyed that. Then went back to Mexico, where lots of things happened, but the most sort of monumental thing that happened is my first daughter was born. So basically, I went crazy, because you do when you've got babies, you don't sleep and nothing like that. So I was running a teacher training course, sharing a teacher training course. Well, my head was full of my master's course, so my brain was all scrambled with theory and transformational grammar and things like that, and I wasn't sleeping properly, because this little baby just wouldn't let us sleep properly. So my poor trainees couldn't understand a word I said, because I was going and the only thing I could think of doing was to try and write some notes to give them afterwards, to sort of help clarify the things that I'd been saying in such a confused, sleep-deprived, mixed-up way, and they worked. They absolutely worked, and it turned out that on paper, my voice was
wait. So you're going to my next question, which was, when did you start your writing career?
Well, I did write something before that. I'm getting it all mixed up, but this particular story, and then I'll come back to that, because I've forgotten. I've just forgotten a piece of my biography. But that story is that it's when I started writing these notes for teachers that I found this methodology voice. And those notes eventually became a book called The Practice of English Language Teaching, which is now had 5 editions. But I'd forgotten to say that along the way somewhere, yes, I taught for 2.5 years in, that's the one, and that's the 2nd edition. The original edition was published in 1983. I wrote it as a boy, obviously. And, but what was I going to say? Super quick. Yeah, I did miss out the bit where I worked in a language school in Bournemouth on the south coast of England for 2.5 years, and I co-wrote my first 2 big books called Advanced Speaking Skills, Advanced Writing Skills. You know, so but anyway, and then I must stop talking because you have questions. And then lived in Mexico, and the kids were born. Then came back to from Mexico to live in England to live as a full-time writer, because Longman in those days, now Pearson, wanted me to write stuff for them. And then I started this extraordinary life that some of us have. I know that Gustavo is there, so he'll understand what I'm talking about. This extraordinary life of traveling around to meet teachers and work with teachers and things like that. And that's the reason why I ended up falling in love with Argentina, because I've been there so many times. And one last story, and you can imagine, the first time I came to Argentina was hace años, and I was so excited because I was going to be back. This is such a boring cliche of a story. I was going to be back speaking Spanish. And like everyone who arrives, for the first 24 hours, when you get there, if you're not Argentinian or you're Hawaiian or something, you just go, what the hell? What's going on? Until you get used to it. Full stop.
But that's right. You're right. You know, my husband is Polish. And when the first time he came to Argentina, he said, well, I speak Polish, English, German, and a little bit of Italian. I will have no problem in Argentina. But when he came, nobody spoke any of those languages in the street. 20 years ago, 20 years ago. So he found it very difficult to move around at the airport with the taxi drivers. That was a long time ago.
I think what I found difficult was what I found difficult originally was, of course, the porteño accent, of course, because like most first-timers, I arrived in Buenos Aires for the first time. And the other thing is just the vocabulary and the modismos and things like that, and that was difficult. But now I find myself entirely comfortable when I come back, which I hope I will do one day. Yeah.
Yes, we all hope you soon come back. So you were talking about going to Mexico and back to England. What was the strangest thing that happened to you in airports, at airports, when traveling? Did they ever lose your luggage? Did you miss a plane? What was the strangest thing that happened to you?
Oh,
not only to Mexico, anywhere.
This is gonna go on all night. I've got so many stories. I'll try and be brief. I remember once that the first time I went to Brazil, I went to a place in the northeast of Brazil called Recife, and in those days, Air France flew to it. Anyway, so I went to Recife. This was years and years ago, and I did 2 or 3 talks. This was before mobile phones and anything else like that. And the guy who was looking after me was a really nice young man, but I was the first author he'd met, and he was really nervous. He didn't actually know that I was equally nervous, but that's, you know, that's so we did the talks in Recife, and then we went to the airport to catch a plane down to Rio de Janeiro, which is about 3 hours, because, and this was in the evening, because the next morning at 9, I had a talk in Rio de Janeiro. and we were chatting away. I got on really well with him. He became a friend, and we checked in and everything, and then we got into the departures lounge, and we were sitting there at the gate and chatting away, and then I looked over at the tarmac, because in those days, you know, airports weren't nearly as full, and I said to him, I said, look, I don't want to worry you, but I think our plane's gone. And because this was, when was this? This was in the 1980s, I guess. We just walked out onto the tarmac to try and find our plane, and it had gone. At which point, we rushed out back to the check-in or something like that, and said, help, 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 you've got to find us a flight. And at which point they said, well, there aren't any flights till tomorrow.
Oh my God.
And then this poor guy, because he was only quite new in the editorial, because he just went white as a sheet, you know, and he just said, what? Oh no. So we finally managed to get a flight for about 3:30 in the morning to take us down to Rio, which would get us there about 6:37, which means we probably just about make it for the talk. And he rang his boss on a payphone, you know, and his boss was furious.
Yes,
with him.
I can imagine.
You know, so the only thing to do was to drink caipirinhas, because well, he needed cheering up, and I was quite keen on the idea, so we had lots of caipirinhas, and I thought, this is fine. We're going to get, you know, we'll have 3.5 hours sleep on the plane at least, you know, like that. But it was, La Turbulencia was just absolutely appalling. So no sleep. so then you go back, you get to your hotel, quick shower, change your clothes, and you run in, and there's a room full of teachers, you know. And this guy, who's funny enough, unfortunately he's deceased now, but it was a man called Guy Gerlach. And I've never admired anyone so much, because I stayed awake for my talk, but then I was doing the talking. But the really impressive thing is, so did he. But there are many more stories like that.
Oh my God, yes, I'm sure. I was about to ask you, oh, when was that? No cell phones at those times, and you just said it was a payphone. Yeah, so no way of communicating with the boss and making him and assure him that you will be there, would be there on time. Nothing. Just no news about you too.
How did we do that? I don't know.
Unbelievable. But did you ever lose your luggage?
Lost. Oh yeah. Oh yes. I lost my luggage when I came to when I flew to Buenos Aires. It was Iberia, and I've never got my suitcase back. And it had and because we were going to do
what they generally did when you came to Argentina was like a tour for every province possible. So you came to Buenos Aires and then to some other provinces.
But this particular one, I was going to do my talks, but also I was going to do a show in the Teatro Borges in Buenos Aires with Claudia and that lovely Argentinian actress whose name escapes me for just a second. I know her very well. So it had lots of different clothes, lots of everything. I had a guitar with me and everything, and the guitar survived, but the suitcase disappeared, and that was awful. But and the lovely Pearson people, we were down in Provincia de Buenos Aires, and it was really cold, and they took me shopping, and I've still got some of the clothes I bought down there. That was fabulous, you know.
People are reminding me there that Malena Solda was the actress.
Of course it was Malena Solda. I'm sorry, I just had a senior moment. And we did a show, and I love that. She's such a... Claudia is an amazing poet and performer, and Malena Solda is just sublime, you know, absolutely sublime. It was one of the great privileges of my life to do that. You know.
That's right.
That was quite something. One other Argentina story. I flew down to Argentina on Lufthansa once, and I arrived right in the middle of the SARS panic. It was SARS, wasn't it? Which was the illness that closed Argentina before COVID. What was the last one?
Sorry, what did you say? What was that one? What?
The last pandemic that closed Argentina was SARS, wasn't it? We call it SARS. What do you call it? So that suddenly the president or the governor of Buenos Aires or something suddenly closed everything. I'm sure it was SARS. So I arrived in Buenos Aires only to find that we couldn't do anything. And the only thing we managed to do is talk to a few teachers in the hotel, but nothing. So I'd flown all. So you know what it's like. It's quite a long way.
People are saying here H1N1.
Yeah, that was
H1N1.
Oh, yes, that was the one. And
gripe A.
Eso. And so
So you arrived in the middle of that?
Yes, and I couldn't do anything. So I'd flown all the way from, down there to the Cono Sur, but I managed to make it over to Montevideo, where they had all the teachers together. Everyone was perfectly happy, no problem at all like that. And I did my talk, and then I flew back via Ezeiza, and I got onto this Lufthansa plane, and the cabin crew said, "Didn't you just arrive?" I said, "Well, yes, but but there we are." I have 362 other aircraft stories, but probably not.
Yeah, but it happened that when they lose your luggage, you generally have to be wearing the same clothes until it arrives, if it arrives.
That's the problem. If it arrives, yeah.
If it arrives. So you mentioned Spanish, but I know you speak other languages. How many languages do you speak? And what's the story behind each of them?
I'm not super. I speak some French, but not very well. I speak English, obviously, and I'm trying to learn Portuguese, but I'm making a mess of it. But I have discovered that if I need anything badly enough, Portuñol sort of works.
So I remember when we met in Mar del Plata, and Oriel Villa Garcia was your host there.
Yeah.
It was the Pearson Conference in Mar del Plata, 2006, I think.
Yeah.
And you met my husband, and when you learned he was Polish, you asked him, "Can you teach me some phrases? Because I am going to Poland now, and I would like to greet the people in Polish." Yeah, and I was so surprised at that. I was thinking, wow, that's so true. When people greet us in our own language, we feel so welcomed and so appreciated.
Yeah, I think it's super different. Now this is really interesting about language learning, because if you can, you always try and learn a phrase, some phrases, because it's like a courtesy, It's like being courteous. If you just charge into a country and say, "Hello, speak English," it's courteous. What's interesting is you can learn some phrases, but it's really interesting about short-term memory, because of course then you fly home and they just disappear in smoke. Because for language to stay in your mind, it has to stay in your mind. There has to be, and it's always rather wonderful when real life kind of experience obeys what we read. So what we know about retention of vocabulary and language is that you have to have lots of repetition of encounter. They have to be spaced out and stuff like that before it actually gets down into your head, down into your memory, down into your kind of being. And the problem about learning all these phrases I once only ever done this once. I was in Tehran in Iran, and I was giving a talk, and there'd been some discussion about whether talks were going to be in Farsi or in English. Well, I don't speak any Farsi at all, but I spent 25 minutes with a conference organizer who taught me how to say, I learned it kind of phonetically or phonemically, I should say. And she taught me how to say, I was going to do my talk in Farsi, but the conference organizer said I had to speak English. I apologize. So I said this in Farsi, and the place kind of erupted and everyone was really, really happy, at which point I forgot every single sound. Boom, gone. You know.
Of course, because you were just repeating words with no sense to you, that they made no sense to you. It happens to me with Polish, for example. I try to learn and I repeat the words, but they make no sense to me because I cannot hear anybody repeating them around me.
That's exactly the point. And you don't need them. You're not, you know, they're not part of just like sort of social constructivism. You're not part of any kind of interaction which makes them sort of stick in your brain. You've just reminded me, one of the funniest things ever, you know about IELTS,
yes.
you know, the UK version of FAPI, and,
yes.
and we have our conference, and one year, it's one of the most clever things I've ever seen, and one year IELTS was in Cardiff in Wales, and so the president of IELTS at the opening, a man called Herbert Puchter, who I'm sure that many people
yes, I know.
It was one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen. He stood there and spoke to us all in Welsh.
Wow!
And because he'd done what I did in Iran, he'd learnt some, or I don't know whether he had it on a piece of paper, but he'd learnt enough. And one of the other people there stood there as an interpreter and said what he was saying in English. And what he said was, IELTS, we've had a big meeting and we have decided that this year, because we are in Wales, it would only be a good thing if all of the IELTS conference was in Welsh. So it's a migrant. And for a second, but people got the joke and then started to laugh. But for a second, everyone was going, what? 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 It was just so clever. It was a great moment.
That was very clever indeed.
Yeah.
To have the interpreter in English.
Yes, it was wonderful.
So coming back to, do you want me to give you some minutes to enjoy your wine?
No, well, I'm very happy to. I just fill my glass and keep drinking because it's happy hour.
Yes.
It's just.
So what memories do you have from your trips to Argentina? First to Argentina as a country, and then what specific memories or what do you remember from your trip to Jujuy?
Gosh,
so many places you have visited.
Yeah, my brain's doing a tremendous kind of all the memories and all the things, moments in Buenos Aires, moments in Cordoba, moments in all Rosario and Mar del Plata. That Mar del Plata conference was amazing, that you mentioned, although it had a negative side for me, which was when the conference was over, we all went, me and the Longman team, the Pearson team, we went to celebrate at the end because it was a big event and everyone had worked so hard, and we went to a lovely place, and there were about 25 of us. A lovely place, beautiful dinner, nice wine, conversation. There was some dancing and that kind of thing, and then they had a stand-up comic. And if you talk to many people for example, who speak English as a second language and speak it really well. But if you sit them down in front of some British comedy, they find it very difficult. Unless you live here and you're sort of part of the society, you're completely embedded in the culture. So,
That's
so
right.
this stand-up comic came there, and everyone was screaming with laughter. And I was so depressed. I couldn't understand anything.
Of course.
It's all cultural references, Argentinian cultural references, and double meanings and puns and jokes. But I just felt being so depressed. I thought I could speak Spanish. Oh no! But no. But so many memories, so many happy.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting because maybe as a host, you always think of humor as a good investment, you know, for your meeting, for your party. But you have to be very careful with the cultural surroundings.
I'm sorry, my brain's going all over the place. It must be the wine. But it suddenly reminded me of, this is a non-Argentinian story, but I was once in Zagreb in Croatia. And they wanted to give me this a cultural experience. So they took me to the theatre. But of course, it was in Croatian. And I don't speak ni una palabra, ni una palabrita, the Croatian. But the good luck was that it was a play I knew. It's a play called Art, which is a three-hander. And I'd seen the play, and funnily enough, for reasons which aren't important, I'd read the play. So I knew what was going on. And then you have this extraordinary experience of watching and listening in a different way. So that the sound of the language and the things that the actors were doing became absolutely fascinating, because you weren't just sort of relying on the language to do it for you. Yes, I knew more or less what was happening. I mean, I couldn't understand what they were saying. I sort of knew what was happening, and there's a big scene where one of the characters breaks down, and I knew what his problem was. But I couldn't understand anything. But then you watch in a different way, and you learn in a different way. Absolutely fascinating.
Yes, that's the magic of drama and theater and art. It's amazing. I can live it every year with the little kids, my students, when we take them to theater performances, and the language isn't a barrier for them. They understand what's happening. They enjoy the plays, and it's amazing because some parents say, but he's too young. I don't think he will understand. And I always have to explain this to them. It's art, and you just live through it. You enjoy it. The performance is so great that you don't need to actually understand every word.
Yes, I get that. And if you're a good performer, you can make people, you can communicate what you want to communicate.
Exactly.
I once watched a Spanish guy speaking to a group of Australian teachers. He was a reasonably well-known actor because he'd been in a telenovela or something, and his parents had gone to Australia after La Guerra Civil in Spain and things like that, or something. Anyway, and he told this long joke in Spanish to an audience, most of whom, and this wasn't like stand-up comedy. It was one of those story jokes, you know, which is a long story which builds up to a climax. And he told this long joke in Spanish to about 200 people, most of whom didn't speak any Spanish at all. And it really worked. It was absolutely fascinating because he knew how. This is a joke he told many times before. He knew how to explain it, and he had actions and mime and things like that. Absolutely fascinating. And funnily enough, I was saying to you that I just came from this campfire with these Central European teachers this evening. and so what people were doing was sort of singing and reading poetry and things like this, and just having a lovely time, because it's the end of a 4-week course, an amazing course. And there was a woman in Kiev in the Ukraine, and what she did is she and her daughter together, and they spoke a Shakespeare sonnet 73, and the first time they did it in English. The second time they did it in French.
Wow.
And the third time they did it, the daughter, beautiful young woman, did it in Ukrainian.
Wow.
It was, I just thinking about it now, it makes me go all shivery. The sound of a language, even a language you don't speak, is just so magical, isn't it? Magic.
That's right. Amazing. And the memory you keep.
Yes, totally. You asked me about Jujuy and up there in
yes, up here.
Yeah, and no one had. I don't think anyone had ever told me how different and beautiful it was.
Humahuaca, Purmamarca.
I was taken off by Marcela, and we started off in Tikara, and then we went to Humahuaca and Purmamarca and Los Colorados, las colinas de siete colores and everything. It's beautiful. It's absolute. It was only 2 days or something, but my eyes were like kind of saucers, you know. It was absolutely beautiful. I will never forget those 2 days. And I've got my photos. Everyone takes photos in the square in Humahuaca, which is, it looks a bit like
Tilcara, probably.
No. It was in the village. So you've got the white in the market in
Purmamarca,
and you've got the white houses. You've got the market with the ponchos and the sarapes and all this kind of thing, and the blue sky, and behind these mountains of siete colores. It's absolutely, it just, if you live there, I guess you're just used to it, you know. But if you visit, it's just kind of wow. It was I just absolutely took my breath away. It was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
We're always very proud of that, and happy to get guests and visitors to admire it. We are so happy to be able to do that, because we're very proud Jujeños.
Pues con razón. I tell everyone about it. You know, I say you wouldn't believe it. You know, because and everyone's so. This is not to say anything against anywhere in Argentina. It's not the point. The point of the story, you know, and Salta. I love Salta as well. The lovely sort of square and the church there. But no, it's just because I had no idea. I had no idea, and then suddenly they say, we're going to take you and show you, you know, where we come from and stuff like that. And you go, wow, it's just amazing. You know.
How nice. And they are telling me in the chat that they also took you to a guitarreada at Fortunato Ramos' place.
Oh, yeah,
to sing and dance there.
Yes.
In Humahuaca.
Yeah. That was just amazing. Oh no! The trouble about memory is there's a wonderful Australian poet, and she talks about memory like a fruit on the table, plump, ripe, and already spoiling. And that's the problem about memory is you know that why some bits you hang on to. And some bits just, so I can't recall all of it. It wasn't that long ago, but I can't recall all of it because memory's like that. It kind of, it's like a sieve. Some bits fall through the cracks, you know. So.
What about flavors? What do you think of that? Are those good memories too?
Yes, though.
Empanadas.
Yeah, well, empanadas, of course. This will make you laugh. This will make you laugh because this is a sort of since you mentioned cultural stuff, cultural taste. So one time I was in Buenos Aires. Sorry to go back down to the capital.
No,
it's Buenos
okay.
Aires, and I was on my own for that evening, and I thought, what shall I do? And they have these little folletos in the hotel reception, and I saw this little advertisement for a restaurant, un restaurante mexicano que se llamaba Guadalajara de Noche. And I thought, wow, a Mexican restaurant, yeah, go. Although experience tells you that Mexican restaurants outside Mexico, not. Anyway,
yeah.
but so I thought, I'm going to go to a Mexican restaurant. It was somewhere near Recoleta or something. So I went walking off to this Mexican restaurant. I was so happy. I walked in and it was clear that the staff, at least some of the staff, were Mexican, and it just looked a bit Mexican and stuff like that. And I looked at the menu, and you know, queso fundido con chorizo. Yeah, great, I love that. And then they had carne asada a la tan pequeña, you know, con todos sus
aderezos.
So the queso fundido con chorizo was exactly like they serve it in Mexico. And then the carne asada a la tan pequeña came along. And I wasn't thinking, and I said, oiga, disculpe, perdón, pero es que no lleva chile. ¿Y rajas? ¿No hay rajas? Y no hay chile. And this guy said, pues señor, la gente de acá no les gusta el chile. So that was it. I just remember that as being, you know, sometimes you kind of put your foot in it culturally. You learn stuff. So that always makes me laugh, that experience. No, sir, I mean, people here don't like chili, you know, and so.
Not that much, that much. And I think it's like you said, sometimes it's not even in the menu, or what they consider hot is not as hot as in Mexico.
Yeah. But it's just, I mean, I didn't. Yeah, I mean, if you live in Mexico for a few years, you just end up eating. I mean, you should never be fooled. Mexican cuisine is incredibly varied. Doesn't have, you know, there's so many beautiful things to taste. I would say that I got used to it, but of course, the one thing you get used to is the fact that, you know, you have salsas you have salsas and chili everywhere. So. You know, but anyway, that was just me being really stupid, because if I'd thought about it, because I know that, you know, empanadas don't have any chili in them. I love empanadas, by the way, and stuff like that. Of course not, but that was just, I just started going, excuse me, I've just ordered a Mexican dish, which is my favorite Mexican dish, with no chili. Well, of course not, you know. Anyway, sorry.
And when you were here, do you remember trying, because we were talking about this before, do you remember trying any Jujeño wine? Like they call it vino de altura?
Oh,
no.
My favorite wine, although it wasn't that, there was one night years ago in Mendoza, and
Las Hormigas, you said.
Yes, that's right. And we went to this bodega in Mendoza, which I believe doesn't exist anymore, but it was a lovely place. The walls were made of wood. There was a roaring fire in the grate. The wine glasses were hanging from the ceilings, and they glittered and shone like diamonds and stuff. And then the guy just brought us different wines to taste. And there's one wine there called Altos Las Hormigas, which is a Mendocino wine, it's not fantastic, but I was so. It
was experience.
Yes, and they've invented this legend, and the legend is that one year the grape harvest was overrun with hormigas, and they all said, oh my God, this is terrible. You know, they're going to eat all the plants and things like that. But then something happened, and all the ants died, and their bodies sunk into the ground. And supuestamente, this gives the wine a special kind of flavor and makes it lovely. Es una tontería, but it's just really good fun. And so I remember once when I was teaching I taught in New York for a few weeks, and I remember going into a wine shop to buy some wine, and there was this row of bottles out of Las Hormigas, and I said, look, that's that wine from.
You were so happy to see it again. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. But so you tried different things in Argentina, but do you prefer asado to empanadas and the other kind of food that you try in the provinces? Do you prefer the asado that is served in Buenos Aires, for example, because you visit mostly Buenos Aires?
No, well, I mean, here's another great Argentinian memory for me. And we went, this was fairly recently, we went to, is it called Las Colinas? No, El Cumbre. Oh. We were taken, I've just completely forgotten where it was, but the point of the story is we went riding. A bunch of us went riding out in the hills.
Estancia?
We rode for about 2 or 3, 4 hours, so that everywhere you looked, it was out in the hills. So it was called, it wasn't called Las Colinas. It's out in the hills, and 360 degrees around you, nothing.
Wow.
Just hills, and not even smoke, nothing. And it was just 10 of us and 3 dogs barking as they ran, and it was just complete and utter magic. I still, my heart's beating thinking about it. And
was it in Cordoba?
No. If I remember before the end of our chat. And then finally we rode back down, and there was a little sort of hut, and there was this asado, and we sat there eating and drinking wine, and beer, and it was just that's kind of heaven, really, isn't it? It's sort of a memory of heaven, you know. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
So were you always able to manage were you always able to balance between pleasure and work during your trips to Argentina or other countries, or were you always rushing from airports to conferences?
I think it depended who was organizing the trip. Some of them were insane, exactly as you say. You know, you do a talk, maybe you sleep in the hotel, first thing in the morning it's an airport, and off you go to somewhere else, you know. Off you go to Tucumán, and when you leave Tucumán you go to somewhere else, and they go somewhere else. Okay, here's the downside of what I've been privileged to do over the years before we were all locked down. I haven't, like everyone, I haven't been in an aeroplane since February, February, which is unusual for me. I haven't missed it at all. You know, flying isn't much fun, to be honest, and airports well, they're airports. And then you have to get there through the rush hour traffic or something like that. Or, but the huge privilege, and I recognize it as a privilege, and I'm sort of feel very humble about it, is to have, you know, how else would I have got to Argentina? I might have come there because it's a country. Why wouldn't you want to visit Argentina? But it's a long way away, and there's a whole world out there. But so yeah, I've worked really hard in Argentina. You know, lots of talks. By the way, worked really hard. I'm not complaining. That's why I came there. But it's the sort of moments, the still moments. Maybe it's just a meal. Maybe it's an evening. Maybe it's maybe it's just a walk through the cemetery in the Recoleta or something. Maybe it's just walking across was it 19 de Julio or something? Or 9 de Julio. The big
9 de
avenue,
Julio.
9 de Julio. And maybe it's just crossing that and making sure you don't get run over, and then just seeing how people are and feeling the massive privilege of you know, being in a different world. And on a profound level, I think all of this, I don't understand the kind of anti-foreigner bias you find in some countries, including, to my shame, my own, or the sort of anti-immigrant, you know, and we've had our own disaster in 2016, you know, where we voted to leave the European Union, and the result of that has been, amongst other things, a sort of rise in sort of anti-foreigner sentiment, and it's incomprehensible. No, that's not true. It's comprehensible if you think about it long enough. It's understandable, but it just makes no sense. And if you have been privileged, I repeat again and again, privileged to visit other places, you can't sustain that. You can't sustain that feeling because I mean, I know there are many British roots in Argentina and stuff like that, but not predominantly. Many more Italians and Italian roots and all sorts of other things, and other nations and so on and so forth. But that's not the point. The point is Argentina is fundamentally different from my country in the way society is, and but it's just a very comfortable place to be, because once you become a citizen of the world, that's what you are, a citizen of the world. I don't know quite why I went off in that direction, but I think it was something about your question about. So the little moments in Argentina haven't necessarily been big things. They've just been walking past something and a smell, or two people talking on the street, but it doesn't look quite the same as it does in, you know, in London or something. I don't know. And then, you know, yeah, there you go.
So Jeremy, I cannot thank you enough for accepting my invitation. And I would love to have a message for us teachers here in Argentina, because before our time is due, this is my son's clock. And it always reminds me that we have only 60 minutes on the Instagram live session. So would you leave us a message for us teachers in Argentina and around the world, because we have people from Moscow, even from Moscow today.
Wow. Look, I think this is really important. I think if you think what's happened in the last few months, so many teachers have suddenly been forced to teach in ways that most of them didn't before, and to become used to an online environment, a virtual environment, which is not, and it's tough. And if you teach all day and it goes from one Zoom meeting or Teams meeting or whatever it is to another, that's really hard news. That's tough work. But the thing that blows my mind is the creativity that people have shown, and the amazing, wonderful things that teachers have done. And it sort of makes me think back of my career about, you know, everywhere you go and maybe offer a talk or something, and then people tell you what they do, and you just go, wow, this is such a wonderfully creative profession. And I think I'd want to just say, that's what you have to foster. And my message, if I have a message, would be some of the things I've been hearing about in the virtual world of teaching are not the more formal aspects of teaching grammar and things like that. They've been about how to create empathy, how to create community, how to sustain students' interest and keep them on task in a bizarre situation. They've been about the incredible power of attention and silence that you can achieve online, and that in face-to-face classrooms is more difficult to achieve. So I ended up with about 4 things that I think we've been learning this year, and they're not about the formal aspects or how to teach the present simple, though that matters. Of course it matters. But they've been about the fundamental role of teaching, which is about creating community, expressing empathy, and helping students to express empathy for each other and support each other. And above all, they've been about the sheer power of using silence to enable people's attention, to give attention to the present moment in the classroom. And I know that sounds rather sort of airy-fairy and philosophical. We don't have enough time to go into it in detail. But I personally have learnt in my interactions online these things. And I believe it's changed the way I look at things. And when and if the world returns to some kind of normal, thanks to Pfizer or AstraZeneca or whoever else is coming up with vaccines, well, maybe we'll all go back to abrazando and running around and shout, moving around classrooms. But the lessons we've learned, these lessons of attention and empathy and community, are lessons we must never be allowed to forget, because what the online world has done for us is made us realize how important they are. And all of us have survived in these days by making connections we never thought could be as strong as they are, because this is how our conversation started, because of the incredible luck we have that this wretched pandemic, which is not lucky, it's killed people we love, people we know. It's an absolute nightmare. But the luck we've had for this to have happened in a connected world, for those of us who are connected, and I think basically what we need to do as teachers is just reflect all the time on what it is we've learned, both in our professional sphere and in our personal sphere in these days, because it's been a tough old ride, hasn't it?
That's right. So let's keep on making community. Let's keep on being in touch. Muchas gracias, Jeremy. Y esperamos verte pronto en Argentina.
Si Dios quiere, yo también quiero estar en Argentina otra vez. Ándale pues.
Muchas gracias. Salud.
Buenas noches. Salud. See you later. Bye. Bye. Bye.